The question landed like a thunderclap in the quiet room, heavy enough to make his chest tighten before his mind could catch up. After years of surviving on half-sleep, unpaid bills, and the constant fear of losing everything, one unexpected moment threatened to change the course of his life forever. What his boss asked that night wasn't inappropriate, loud, or dramatic, but it carried a weight that reached straight into the heart of a single father who had learned to expect nothing from the world. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and quiet moments that can transform a life, take a second right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this matter because people like this exist. Marcus Holloway had been a single dad for almost 7 years, ever since a drunk driver ran a red light in Toledo, Ohio, and erased the future he thought he had. He didn't talk about that night anymore. Grief had become something practical for him, folded neatly into lunchboxes and bedtime routines. His son Noah was 10 now, bright-eyed, stubborn, and endlessly curious. Every morning, Marcus woke up before dawn to make breakfast, iron a shirt that barely hid the wear of time, and remind himself that stability, no matter how exhausting, was love. That stability came from a job he never expected to keep this long. Marcus worked as a project supervisor for a mid-sized construction firm based in Columbus. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the rent, kept the lights on, and covered Noah's asthma medication. His boss, Rachel Whitmore, was known in the company as sharp, demanding, and distant. She wore her authority like armor, polished and impenetrable. Marcus had always respected her, but from a careful distance. He knew better than to blur lines when everything he had depended on this paycheck. That week, they were both in Denver for a regional expansion project. The company had booked them into a modest hotel near the site. It was late, snow pressing softly against the windows, the kind of cold that made even the city feel hushed. They'd spent 12 straight hours reviewing contracts, correcting mistakes left behind by a previous management team, and racing a deadline that felt impossible. By the time they wrapped up, exhaustion had stripped away formality. It was just two people sitting across a table, surrounded by paperwork and half-empty coffee cups. Rachel mentioned that her flight had been delayed until morning due to weather. Marcus nodded, already calculating how many minutes he could shave off tomorrow's schedule to still make his video call with Noah before school. That was when she looked at him. Not as a boss, not as a title, but as a human being who had been carrying more than he let on. She asked if he wanted to stay tonight and finish things in the morning, suggesting they could rest instead of forcing another late night. The silence afterwards stretched, not because the question was inappropriate, but because Marcus had spent so long translating the world through fear. Fear of missteps, fear of misunderstanding, fear of losing the fragile life he had built. His instinct was to retreat, to apologize for existing. But exhaustion loosened something in him. Instead of freezing, he made a quiet joke about how staying the night anywhere other than home usually meant he'd wake up at 3 a.m. panicking about whether Noah had brushed his teeth. It wasn't clever. It wasn't rehearsed. It was honest. Something shifted in the room. Rachel smiled, not the polite corporate version, but a real one, soft around the edges. Marcus didn't notice it at first. He was too busy feeling embarrassed for letting his guard slip, but that small joke cracked open a door he didn't know existed. Rachel saw, in that moment, not an employee who clocked in early and left late, but a father who carried his entire world on his back and still showed up every day. They agreed to stay, to rest, to finish in the morning. Nothing dramatic happened that night. No grand confession, no cinematic turning point. Just two exhausted adults heading to separate rooms, each carrying new thoughts they didn't quite know how to name. Over the next few weeks, something subtle began to change. Back in Ohio, Marcus noticed that Rachel checked in differently. She asked about Noah, not in passing, but with genuine curiosity. She adjusted deadlines without making him beg. When Marcus had to leave early one afternoon because Noah's school called about an asthma flare-up, Rachel told him to go without hesitation. No lectures, no reminders about professionalism, just understanding. For Marcus, this was unfamiliar territory. He had spent years in workplaces where compassion was conditional, where single fathers were expected to be grateful just to be tolerated. He struggled with the guilt of accepting kindness, constantly waiting for the moment it would be taken back. But it wasn't. Week after week, the respect only deepened. Then came the layoff rumors. The company had overextended during expansion, and everyone knew cuts were coming. Marcus felt the old panic claw its way back into his chest. At night, after Noah fell asleep, he stared at spreadsheets of their expenses, calculating worst-case scenarios. He updated his resume in silence, careful not to let his son see the fear he worked so hard to hide. One evening, Rachel asked him to stay late after a staff meeting. The office was mostly empty, the hum of fluorescent lights echoing in the quiet. Marcus braced himself for bad news. Instead, Rachel told him that his position was safe. Not because of favoritism, not because of that night in Denver, but because his work had held entire projects together. She said leadership wasn't always loud, and loyalty wasn't always visible, but it mattered. Marcus didn't know what to say. Gratitude tangled with disbelief. He left the office that night walking slower than usual, letting the weight lift just enough to breathe. Months passed. The seasons changed. Snow melted into spring, and Noah learned to ride his bike without training wheels. Marcus's life didn't suddenly become easy, but it became lighter. He was promoted, not into something flashy, but into a role that allowed flexible hours and remote days. For the first time since his wife died, Marcus felt like he wasn't just surviving, he was building something stable again. Rachel, too, changed. She attended Noah's school fundraiser quietly, standing at the back of the room. She laughed more. She listened more. The walls she had built for herself softened, brick by brick. Their connection remained respectful, careful, rooted in trust rather than impulse. Whatever it was, it grew slowly, honestly, without pressure. One evening, as Marcus tucked Noah into bed, his son asked why he smiled more these days. Marcus didn't have a perfect answer. He just said that sometimes people surprise you when you least expect it, and that kindness can show up wearing the most unexpected faces. Before this story ends, I want to ask you something personal. If you've ever been a single parent, felt invisible at work, or survived a season where one kind moment kept you going, please comment below and share your experience. Someone reading it might need that reminder tonight. Life doesn't always change with grand gestures. Sometimes it shifts because someone saw you clearly in a moment when you were too tired to pretend. Sometimes a simple joke, spoken from a place of honesty, opens a door you didn't even know you were knocking on. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that compassion still exists in quiet corners of the world, please like this video, share it, and let us know in the comments. Your engagement helps these stories reach the people who need them most.